design agent from AdAstra IP. He also does a lot of interesting things. Well, actually, Mohan, why don't you explain it? One line about yourself.
It's a one-stop IP center from perfection to commercialization. And it's also across the board. From individual inventors to big corporations.
So essentially, everything.
Everything I do.
That's right. And on our left-hand side over here, we have Earl Martin Valencia.
Met you guys yesterday.
Yes, some of them. All the way from the Philippines. He, of course, heads this, I would say it turned into more like an accelerator in the end, didn't it? IdeaSpace.
Accelerator fund, right?
Yeah, he's raised about $12 million in funding for 28 companies. Yeah.
38 now, I funded 10 last week.
And you're still working on
Well, so that we've been updated. And he does a lot of these kind of pushes for companies if you're ever interested. So if you want somebody in the Philippines, he'll be able to connect you to the right ecosystem. That kind of player. Hi, morning. Have a seat.
any sort of technology.
No, so we invest actually as long as there's science, technology, and has global potential. That's the year.
Science. It doesn't
Yeah.
need to be just application.
No, it's not apps. Over 40% of my funds funded by telco, but we look at Internet of Things, artificial energy, water, healthcare.
And of course, on the right, we have Bobby Liu. He's our moderator. He's the president and founder of Hub IT, which is a co-working space to begin with, but it grew into an incubation space. And you can talk to him more about that as well. I believe Hanoi will put you?
Hanoi.
Just Hanoi for now. But anyway, you can speak to them in a moment. I'm just giving you a rough idea of what they do. They'll go into detail with it over the next hour. And Bobby will be asking all of those pressing questions. But ideally, it's a panel discussion, so we want to have both of them speaking to all of you. Let's get started.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Mohan. Thanks, all. Yeah. Round of applause for the panelists. Clap for them first in case later on you need to throw stones at them. Okay, simple questions. Well, you have done the introduction yourself. Okay, simple questions. Number one, why IP is important, an important consideration for new startups and ventures?
All right. Every business will have at least one IP. Your trademark, your brand. Every business will have a brand. I mean, that's how they'll identify what you're doing, your services or your product. So the most basic thing you need to do is at least get your trademark protected. That's the most, and it's not an expensive process. Take an office over here, my IP with your local company. Just get that done. As I said, it's not an expensive process at all. And then you have ways of expanding it overseas. You don't even need to think about overseas for now. The most important thing you need to think about is just your business and growing your business. So don't worry too much about am I safe, am I protected? Just get your trademark done and then move your business. If your business starts taking traction, that's when you need to get, if you want to get worried about your IPs, you can get worried about it at that point. But the most important thing is move your business first. Okay, and just get your trademark done. That's my approach to startups.
Yeah, well, I mentioned this yesterday. I think IP is the secret weapon of startup. In the end of the day, it's all about competitive differentiation, so technical differentiation. So, as an investor, you think about, you have two of these similar products, and honestly, ideas are cheap, right? People's execution is everything, and execution, even wondering and thinking about your IP strategy is actually part of the maturity of the team. And I read the point that I mentioned, where there's some myth going on in Southeast Asia that IP and startup don't correlate with each other. They think that it's a kind of a useless thing to do. But the more mature teams that I see, they're the ones that actually at least have thought about it. Then they can decide, do I think about IP at the scale stage, do I think about IP at the early stage? But if I ask somebody and say, what do you think about how are you going to protect this? Because I don't want to put in money and then in the end someone says I have claim to this. That sucks for an investor, right? I mean, it's just basically like it's just why would they put money into you, or why did they even put money? So now you get into this messy game of how do you then, instead of protecting yourself and your own IP, how do you kind of go around someone else's IP? Or the worst comes, they might even sue you and close down your company. So everyone loses if you don't have a strategy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Use the right word. It's all about strategy. You must have the right strategy, and there's no like one answer fits all. In a way, it depends on the scenario. It depends on what you're getting yourself into. But strategy is very important. You must understand what you're doing. Information you can get out there. You can go to the patent office and Google. You can get a lot of information. You can speak to your friends, who have also gone into this experience of finding IP. But have a strategy, definitely.
Okay. All right. So, at what point then should entrepreneurs pay attention to IP?
That's what I mean, for me, I would say
Generally.
okay, in the beginning itself, if you can, but spending too much of time thinking about IP and not moving your business is also not good. So that's why I said, key thing is move your business, but understand what your IP is, and if you're not intending to file a patent immediately, you must also understand what you can lose out eventually, because unlike trademarks, in case you miss to file a trademark at the beginning stage and you file it only after, you want to file it only after a year, it's possible for trademark, but not for patents. If you've got a good technology and you disclose it to public, once it takes off and then you realize after a year or after 1.5 years, I want to file a patent now, you can't, because once your disclosure date is out, your clock starts ticking. You have 1 year grace period to file a valid application, and that applies for few countries, not necessarily every single country. Some don't even give it a valid grace period. So that's what I meant by you need to understand. You can make a choice. I don't want to file a patent for certain reason. You can always make a choice if that's your strategy, but you have to understand so that you don't get surprised later on when a big investor comes in and says, I like your technology, I want to put some money in it. But then you say, no, but I'm not protected, I don't have any IPs. Then why would they want to spend so much, 10 million to pay for your technology when they can just go and develop it for probably 100,000, for example. No. So that is why you need to understand.
Yeah, and I want to go to the different extreme where, I don't know, especially if it's government-led, they are obsessed with regards to patents, right? Or universities, I don't know if you're in universities. They're obsessed with like how many patents. But then really patents without commercialization is also value of zero, right? So I know it's a global IP valuation conference. So that's another extreme where a lot of people ask, hey, you know what, my patent is worth $1 million, like why? Or trademark at that. My trademark is worth $1 million, like why? I don't know, but I just benchmark it with Coca-Cola, right? I mean, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because of conferences like these. So that's another thing where in the end of the day, there's really no value, in my opinion, for a patent unless it really gets into users' hands or whatever it needs to be done. So I think that's kind of one extreme. Some people, they just rely their whole strategy on their patent, which I think is wrong. But then there's also another extreme where they just disregard this thing at all. Yeah. And I guess if some of you may be doing B2B or B2B2C, that's really when patents actually land some credibility for a small company. I just met a guy here from Axiata, and I met some other large corporations here. That's really leverage for you. Because you can talk to large corporations, honestly, and I showed this chart yesterday where large corporations have huge R&D teams. So you have to prove to them that they cannot either do it themselves because of legal ramifications, or they cannot do it themselves because of just technical limitations, or their staff cannot do it. They don't have the expertise. If you don't have either or, they'll just do it themselves, right? They'll listen to you, and then they'll be saying, oh, that's cool, good idea, I'll probably do it myself. So that's another scenario which I hope doesn't happen to anyone in this room. But it is reality, and I've seen it maybe 100 times over the past 5 or 6 years.
Okay. Oh, this question is for you. You're funded, yes, for you. You're funded, from a bio, you're funded 28, and now you've increased to 38, all right? But have you had any issues with startups with IP problems that you decided not to fund, or have you come across situations of a fellow, VCs doing that?
IP problems. that I decided not to fund. It's actually an interesting question because I've funded companies just on the basis that I think that there is a potential idea that this patent, or potential market this patent could address.
Okay.
So that's the reverse again of what you say. But from a patent problems perspective, what I do, because I do a lot of due diligence even in the patent law, I do a patent search before I invest in a company. If there's anything to search for. So even if it's an app, I just ask my patent lawyer to say, okay, just give me like a big search. It's cost, I don't know, a couple $100. And then they give me a report on like what is the risk. So they tell me the risk of this company that they're infringing on someone else's patent is high, medium, low. And then I can make an informed decision, right? Versus I have no clue. I just Google it and then I know like, oh yeah, there's kind of one thing in Africa that's infringing, could infringe on this thing. So at least that's how I de-risk myself as an investor, is that I do patent search before I invest, which is again not traditional. Most VCs, maybe they do this, maybe they call a technical expert, right? That takes it out of the GLG or something. But at least for me, I have to do that extra step because again, most of my portfolio have some sort of IP. Again, 40% of my portfolio is about hardware, so I have to think more. And then if you add like the IoT or software layer or B2B, then it's about 80% of the portfolio.
Great. All right. Based on those answers, any questions from the floor?
What's your view? I mean, what do you think of your startups as well?
Yeah.
What would they talk
So do
about?
you feel like you would prefer holding it, or you have any problems with it, or you think it's very expensive? Bring that up also. I mean, even if you think it's a very expensive process, share it with us and then we will share with you. Maybe it doesn't need to be. You have the right strategy. So why don't you share your experiences?
I have a question. Okay, so let's say you have your startup, you have your great business idea, you have an idea of a business model. You need to run patent and also trademark search to make sure you're not infringing on anyone else's rights. So, as a startup, zero capital, what would be the first step? Would it be to run a search to make sure that you're not
Don't go to
infringing?
the best patent expert to make a search. Just go to Google and see whether the name is up. Yeah, Google. Just go to Google and check the name out. So anyone can do it. It's free. So just see whether the name is available or not. If you're getting into a business, you have a new application for GPS, for example, and you just go to Google and look at the name that you're thinking of calling your GPS. And if there is another player out there with a similar sounding name, then you might think twice having that name. Maybe you should change the name. Even if it's not in the country, but it's in your neighboring country with a similar name, again, you've got to think twice, because once you still go ahead and use your name, you're going to have a bit of problem when you grow, because you will have a competitor immediately. And not only that, the other person may be able to sue you as well, because you're coming up with a similar business with a similar sounding name. So one of the first things you do is you don't need to go to any experts, you don't need to do anything, just go on Google and see whether the name is available first.
What if there are different markets?
Okay, totally different market, then you're safe. So if you've got a name called ABC and you're selling toothbrushes and there's somebody else having a restaurant called ABC, you're still free. It's
So
okay.
sorry. There is a restaurant called ABC.
Oh, that is okay.
There's a lot of restaurants
called ABC, and you want to call your pencil ABC, and you want to sell, your pencils. You're fine. You're okay to do it. And if you think you're not diluting your name in any way, you can go ahead and do it. Yeah. So make a search. And where patent is concerned, it's a bit more technical. It's not so simple. So firstly, you need to identify: do you really have something that is patentable or not? That's something you need to understand. Is there really something technology? Is it just a new idea, or is there a technology involved in it that can be protected? If there's a technology involved and there's something really new, you should consider having it protected well in the beginning stage. So that's when research the strategy comes in. But if it's just an idea where it's something to do with copyright, again, you can do it immediately. Copyright has got no cost. Copyright is whoever can prove the earliest date of creation will have copyright for it. An example. If I sing right now, hopefully I don't have anybody to leave, but in case I sing right now and there's a video taking a song that I say I created and I sing, then I have the creation for that particular song. But if Earl can prove that a month back he sang the same song and he's got proof of it, then automatically he has copyright for the song because he's got the earlier date of creation. So again, copyright is technically free, it's easy. So you need to see where your idea falls within. Copyrightable thing and a trademark, straightforward. In case it's got a technical element to it that needs to be protected, yes, it's a bit more tedious process. You need a bit of expert guidance, but it's not that expensive and not that difficult.
To follow up on that question in regards to patents, if you have an invention that's, let's say, 80% similar to someone else's that's already patented, does that mean you need to stop there and rethink?
Not necessary.
Yeah, at least from our experience, you've seen that before. But then, patent is always about this technical term called the inventive step. Right? In the end, patent is never about the idea, it's about the process, it's the how. So you have to think, do you have this inventive step that someone else doesn't? And if you do, then that's something that perhaps could be looked upon. So at least that's what I would do. So don't stop there. I think you should push forward, but then once you get into like more and more expense or more and more time, then you have to then think, okay, am I really safe? Because it's actually risk to you. If you execute, you go to market, and then all of a sudden someone else, hey, you're infringing on my patent. That is actually the worst case scenario. So even at early on, at least you have to do your own due diligence to see, are you really differentiated technically or not? And that's the thing you have to research. And honestly, patents you can search, right? You can actually look at their patent is supposed to be public record, right? And you say, okay, is this kind of similar to mine or not? And you can look at it.
Okay, let me just share. I just want to answer that as well. That's a very good question. Okay, if you get something like that, so what you did was you just made again a Google search probably, and then you realized there's somebody else coming up with something similar. Okay, not necessarily even a patent search. You can. It's all public domain, but something simple. Just a Google search, you realize there's something very similar. So you're aware now. There's somebody that's like 80% similar to your invention, but you've got the 20% which is different. You have a choice. Firstly, you need to make a search to see whether there's something called FTO, freedom to operate. So you need to see whether you can actually operate, you can use the invention in this particular country, because there's a possibility that particular invention is only protected, it's all territorial, only protected in US, for example. It's only in US, it's only protected in US. He's not extended it to any other countries. And I told you also, patent, there's a timeline for you to follow something. So if he's also missed the timeline to get into other countries, and he's only filed it in one country for whatever reason, then you're free to use the invention in many places, in all the other countries, 200 odd countries. So you need to really make a search and see where he has filed a patent. So if he's filed a patent in the other extreme, where he's filed a patent in most countries, then you need to see again how he's filed a patent, because at the end of the day, in the patent there's something called claims. Just because you look at the title and it says automobile, invention, improved automobile, that doesn't mean he's protected the whole automobile. Probably he's protected just a wiper in a particular automobile, probably, but he just, the title was a bit misleading. So you need to see what he's actually claimed. So if the claim has got 80%, 80% is what is claimed, and you're using the 80%, then you will be infringing. You would be, But what he's claimed is something very small. You're using the 80%, but what he's actually claimed is something very small for the 80%, because the 70% is also not his. 70% is public domain. He has only done 10% of it, and he's protected only at 10%. So now you're using 80% plus another 20. You may be able to get away with it, because you're using the 70, the 10% also you tweak it a bit, so you may be able to get. So you need to look into the claim now. So you've got to do a bit more research there. But there are ways for you to look into it. Good question, but you don't need to stop, but you need to make some searches. But if you feel, once you find that you are within that, ambit of that claim, then you have to really consider. And he's also got a patent protected in that particular country, then you really need to consider, because otherwise, you spend a lot of money, you launch it, you can be sued.
And this is, this is where your efforts can materialize into something, because say like you do a product search and you end up in getting a relatively closer prior art which is patented, say in the same geography. But your prior art also enables that to challenge that patent, and you have the same art at yourself. So then you can negotiate with him, and then you can enter into a settlement kind of thing, and you can have a venture with him and share his business. So how smart you are at looking at some others' invention and how you can leverage on your opportunities by intelligently dealing with the patents. Basically, as Mohan said, the claims cross the boundary for an invention. So if you have an invention which exactly matches with the claims, then certainly you are not going to enter into market till the patent expires. But still you have a chance. That's okay, you have an invention, but you know somebody has done that work, but this guy has a patent over it, so you can bring that art and show it to him, or you can directly, if he doesn't listen to you, then you can end up in going to court and invalidate that patent, and then you have the freedom to operate.
Yeah, but that's going to be a very expensive process as well, and you've got to be very sure that you can actually win the case. I just want to give you one example, if I can, based on what he's also said. Cross-licensing is something else you can also work on. Not only products can be protected, products, methods, processes, and also use can also be patented, even a new use. For example, paracetamol, Panadol. You've heard of Panadol, you take it to relieve headache. In case someone says there's a new use for Panadol, if I feed my chicken Panadol, the chicken will become fatter. You can fatten a chicken by feeding it Panadol. You've actually got a new use, and it's something non-obvious. So there is a bit of an inventive step element to it. You can actually protect a new use for it, but you will not be able to manufacture the product, because when you want to manufacture a product, the composition is protected by Panadol. So what you do is, but Panadol also can't sell it in this domain, in this industry, because the use is protected by you. That's when you go and speak to Panadol, and you tell them, okay, now I've got a patent for the use, you've got a patent for the composition, but you're using it for headache. You want to sell it in the, for this to the, those who breed chicken. Why don't we get into a cross-licensing? That's when you can also file a patent for your use, which is a slightly equivalent, and then you go and get a license from them, and you cross-license. They can also sell it in your domain. They can leverage on your patent. You can also leverage their composition. Hope you understand that. The example. Thanks.
Wow, that's mind blowing.
Oh, okay. It's interesting. It's very
First I have to worry about cyanide in chicken.
Yeah.
Now I have to worry about paracetamol in chicken. I'm definitely becoming a vegetarian. Okay, next big topic I want to discuss, and I hope it doesn't come to Asia, but I'm sure it will at some point. Patent trolls. Yeah. Recently, I'm sure some of you, if you follow like TechCrunch or the next web, you come across like blogs like EFF, for example, or Ars Technica or something, right? And yet, people that actually go around registering patents for the sole purpose of suing other people, right? And these are actually very intelligent, highly educated, sophisticated operators. Okay, what are your views on that?
Definitely smooth operators. I don't know. I'm pretty biased, right? Because I'm an engineer, and at the same time I fund companies, and I think I still take my own stance that IP without commercialization or the ability to commercialize, I think it's a pity. So a lot of these folks actually, they have no intention at all to commercialize. All they want is to kind of extract the value from an IP. So that's another thing, right? I mean, that's why you always have to think about the protection, because there's just a lot of potential malicious people out there that want to kind of extract. So there might be some folks that you have a suspicion that they could be patent trolls, and some of them are very sly. They're going to try to talk to you and brainstorm and do some interesting solutions. And once you have kind of very close, and then they start to like, oh, why don't like I patent this as well. So I hope that no one else, I guess, in this room happens. And it might happen in Asia as we get more and more sophisticated, and the legal systems are now, instead of promoting IP like today into enforcing IP, the next step is to suing for IP, right? So it's an evolution, and honestly, we're at step one. So I think we have to prove first that IP is valuable in Southeast Asia or Asia, and that's where about the patent trolls. But I hope that that culture of suing for that value hasn't been created yet should not, hopefully doesn't come here before our ecosystem matures enough that there is actually the awareness that there's huge value, and value was already extracted because of IP generated in this region.
Well, we had a conversation on that. I think we shared some interesting things.
Okay, how many of you have heard of this glove manufacturer, Stock Glove? Stock Glove, Malaysian Stock Glove, you've heard of this? Stock Glove, it's a very large, Malaysian glove manufacturer. They had an issue a few years back. They also, they use latex gloves. You come across latex gloves, I mean, you use the, rubber to make gloves. But they also came out with nitrile gloves recently. Synthetic rubber. So nitrile gloves was also protected. Now what happened was, Top Glove got a letter from a company in US saying that they're infringing the patent, and Top Glove should stop manufacturing, or they should pay them royalty. So patent trolls. When Top Glove made some searches, they realized these guys are not manufacturers, they don't have any companies. They just have a patent, and they just rely on a patent to sue Top Glove. And Top Glove is a legitimate glove manufacturing company, which is the largest commercial business. They've got like 25 factories, and they were stopped. Now what happened was, the owner, Tan Sri Lim, I mean, he's just not going to be sitting down and agreeing to it. He can't. And then they were asking for some amount of royalty. So what he did was, he got together with a few other glove manufacturers, and they actually took them to court. And at the end of the day, they won the case. So it was a bit of an unnecessary process, no doubt, but they won the case because they knew they had a good case with them. They could prove that the nitrile patent should not belong to the other side because it is a common knowledge. Common industry, common knowledge. It's already been there for a long time. These guys just went and filed it, got it granted somehow, something a bit narrow, and then they're coming and suing these guys. So at the end of the day, they won. So it has happened here. Hopefully it doesn't become a trend, but it has happened, and because Top Glove, they do have the money to defend themselves, so they were a bit lucky. But just imagine if it was a startup, they would have had a bit of problem. So hopefully it doesn't become a trend.
What's the penalty to the patent? Can they counter sue and say, hey, you're malicious?
Even some malicious, some losses, but you got to prove it, it's not so easy. But at the end of the day, for them, just getting rid of them and making sure they don't come in trouble, that's already good enough for them, so they can just move on with the business.
Okay, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. There's a thing called for trademarking. There's what they call worldwide brand, which, correct me if I'm wrong, they are trademarked in more than 40 countries. It's considered as a worldwide brand. Famous mark, yeah, sorry, yeah, right? Like you can't do, say, McDonald's, for example, because, So does patenting of the technology has that kind of no?
What's our strategy? Previous mentioned is that once they file locally, you have an X amount of funds before you have to file this thing called the PCT, the patent information, right? Where then at least filing date reservation for about 100 plus countries, like you have to kind of say which countries you will potentially file in the future. So as you as a startup and as an investor, before you have to file into the US and file to expensive countries, you then will see if the market actually picks it up before you then do the expensive filing in the other countries. So I would highly advise that, and that's what we do for our portfolio. Because when we go to the US and we try to fundraise or these top investors, they're like, oh, it's like a US, why is it a Philippine or why is it a Malaysian patent? That's kind of not very good. But once you say, oh, by the way, we also have a PCT patent, or patent pending or PCT filing, then they're like, oh, okay, right? So all of a sudden, the other the conversation is as if someone did a patent pending in the US versus, I don't know, this is like a sad realization, guys, right? Because I have an office also in San Francisco. Filing an IP in Malaysia, and if you want to fundraise in another country, especially like in Silicon Valley, there is a little bit of a discount there, right? So I think PCT, you can do it directly even from the MyPo, right? My IPO or something like that, right? Why don't you take advantage of that? I mean, it's a God's gift from heaven, in my opinion.
Yeah. What about the organization WIPO? How is that? Is that a uniform body that you can rely on, like WTO, something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, they run the PCT actually.
Yeah.
They're the body that you do the.
So there's respect for your registration in a particular country, and the respect that you have sort of registered it or do your application.
Absolutely. I mean, it's more of, WIPO is the body that actually sometimes created PCT and also 4 trademarks.
Yeah.
Before you can get into famous mark, I mean, your startups. So famous mark is when you're very famous, very famous. So to qualify into that, it will take some time. Not necessarily startups, within 3 years you can also become a famous mark. Like for example, WhatsApp, Twitter, they became famous very fast. But for startups, I mean, when you look at trademark, there's something called Madrid Protocol. You might want to read about Madrid Protocol. So that's where you can file one application and cover in most countries under Madrid. But that's for trademarks only. When it comes to patents, you have, as what Earl said, you have got something called PCT. And you can try to rely on PCT. But PCT is not one filing that covers in all countries. That's what, how Earl was mentioning. It just prolongs the period into getting into those expensive countries. You have, from the day you file in Malaysia, and if you file a PC within a year, then you have 2.5 years to get into every single country that you're interested in, which is very expensive, But you've pushed it to 2.5 years, but that's why I said you need to have a strategy. So once you file in Malaysia, in case you're going for patent, start talking to people. You don't need to be too worried. You don't need to be worried because you only filed in Malaysia, you're not protected yourself in US. I cannot be talking US because if someone sees it, they go and file in US, I will lose my rights in US. You don't need to worry about that because if you just file in Malaysia, you file the PCT, you will have 2.5 years to still go into US. So if someone looks at your invention, they like it, within a year they go and file in US and you only go to US after 2 years, doesn't matter because your application will be given priority, not the other application. The other application will not be accepted. Yours will be accepted. So that's what I meant by, again, earlier we were saying about strategy. Have a proper strategy, understand what you're trying to do, understand how you're going about it. It doesn't need to be an expensive process as well.
Yeah, and the hope really, again, I look at it from the early investors in these companies, right, is that hopefully by the 2.5-year mark, you're generating your own revenue.
That's exactly.
You have your own kind of legs, so that you're not even using investor money to file for your PCT. You're using customer revenue, and hopefully you have some sort of profit in order that you can take this risk, right? Rather than to say, oh, you're not at this stage and I have no money. If you delay it and say at 2.5 years and you're still not making enough money to file in the US for a patent, and you're going to go to the US, I think you have serious issues with your business model, not even for your IP, right?
That's what I remember. So again, you have, that's why I said start talking. As soon as you file in Malaysia, start talking to potential investors. You speak to so many for 2 years, 2.5 years, and no one shows interest. Don't even bother going and filing in every single country. Because it's going to be very tough. I mean, you've spoken for 2.5 years and nothing has really happened. You really have some serious issues you need to look into your technology. Because by and large, I mean, in 2.5 years, someone should have shown interest. Someone in Middle East might have said, yeah, it looks very interesting. I wouldn't mind licensing the technology in Middle East. Another person from Latin America might say the same thing, and then you can get into a negotiation. Although you've not filed in that country, you can get into a negotiation with them. But if no one shows interest at all, do you really want to spend some money after 2.5 years?
And your life.
You need to think.
Yeah, in your life.
That's exactly, you need to think about it at that stage. Okay, so,
Everyone knows Tinder? Yeah. Come on, don't pretend.
What's that?
No, I don't.
Don't pretend.
I don't.
Okay, the movement left, right. A lot of people are using that, right? Especially, I think there's a new app called Tender without the E, right? So they're using this left, right thing. Okay, is that infringing on anything? For mobile, for example.
if I can just share it with you, I mean, this swipe action, that swipe action is actually a patent. Okay, that has been protected. So sometimes you may not see some things that goes on at the back. You may not be seeing it. For example, you're very familiar with Facebook, but how many of you know Friendster? You know, for example, I mean, someone is a bit older, probably. Yeah, Friendster, but you never use Friendster, right? Yeah. Yes. No, Malaysian company bought over, MOL bought Friendster.
Yeah.
MOL bought Friendster for about 100 million, and they bought the patents as well together with Friendster. So what happened? That's what I meant by what you don't see. So you look at Facebook, you say Facebook is successful, they're doing very well, Friendster, obsolete, gone, closed down, shut down kind of company, but not really. Facebook pays Friendster certain amount of royalty for the patents that Friendster has on social media. So that is why Tan Sri Tan, owner of MOL, actually got a small share from Facebook. When Facebook was listing, he benefited from it because of this, because of the patents that Friendster has. And Facebook said, okay, let's just settle, I'll give you a small share, I think it's just like 1% or 2% or something like that of the company. I'll give it to you in return, you don't collect any royalty, and you don't sue me as well. So they took it, that is why when Facebook went listing, Friendster made money out of it. So these are some things you do not see that goes on at the back. Just like Thomson TV. Have you heard of Thomson TV, Malaysians? Thomson? Okay, some, but how many have not heard? Can I see? Thomson, okay, many not heard, right? But Thomson makes money from the royalties because they file patents. They're quite big in Europe. Sony may be paying them some amount of royalty for the TV that Sony sells, because Sony will be using part of that technology also over here. So you've not heard of Thomson, but they are okay in Europe, but they file many patents on TVs, and they are making royalties from the big brands that you see over here. So sometimes there are things that goes on at the back which you may not be seeing. But this may be a clear-cut infringement. Definitely it's an infringement. Are they paying royalty to the other side? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. But if they're not, I'll be surprised that the patent owner of it or the trademark finger is not doing anything. And if this guy is gaining traction. If they're not gaining traction, maybe they don't bother. But if they are eating into the business, I think they will go after them.
Okay, so for example, I've got this great app, Tinder 2, right? Where can I find out whether this swipe thing of Tinder, is a licensed feature, or either belonging to Tinder or belonging to someone else that I need to pay a royalty to, which I have no problem paying. Obviously, it will help what I'm doing.
Freedom to operate, FTOs.
Yeah. So where?
A patent.
With you, for example.
Yeah, an IP expert or whatever, patent agent. You go to them and then you tell them, okay, can you make an FTO searches? But if you want, you can also go to Google Patents. I mean, you have documents out there that you publicly you can access, and then you have to read the claim and understand what the claim says and see whether the claim covers whatever you're trying to do.
I'll give you a kind of a practical answer, which is could be counter whatever I've been saying for the past 30 minutes, which is, in the end of the day, if you want to do Tinder, go do it.
Yeah.
Right? Go do it and see if there's traction, see if there's something that happened. And then, in the back of your mind, you just think about, okay, how do I... So, just don't let this thing paralyze you. That's the thing also that I want to say, right? Because the worst thing you can do is that you search like, oh, it kind of seems like there's this swipe patent in the US, and I'm just going to stop. Honestly, people can make a lot of excuses, right, to not start, and then someone's gonna, I meet a lot of people and say, oh, I want to make this like Tinder 2, I was like, oh, why don't you do it? Oh, because I Google searched it and all, it kind of looks like I'm going to infringe on someone. I'm like, dude, just do it, right? And then if you infringe, then, we'll deal with it. And honestly, that actually adds more value to Tinder's patents in the future, because at some point, if you go big, right, they want royalties out of you. So it actually is a win-win for the other people. Nobody wants other companies to really shut down, especially if there's potential. Every company wants money into them, right? So I was in Cisco, and we have actually a trademark. Well, Cisco had a trademark for the iPhone. So I was actually like our phone, the IP phone. It's supposed to be IP phone. It's just like a landline, but it's an IP phone. In the end of the day, it was Apple iPhone. But I said, oh, why don't we just sue them and like get all their money, right? Me as a naive manager, like no. Just imagine if every time they put iPhone, we have money coming in. So it's always a win-win. Nobody wants to shut down your startup. But what they want is to get money out of your startup. So at least from a practical perspective, that's what I would advise as at my hat.
As long as a
Strategy, that's the thing. At the end of the day, you understand the market, you have a strategy, it's fine.
Yeah. As long as it's not a threat to the business of the other side, for example.
But I mean, he's saying, in case it can complement and you can get more.
Yeah,
But again, who knows?
Yeah, you never know, right? Until you get, the story has been written for your company, right? So
But at least you understand.
yeah,
You need to understand. You need to understand.
and you assess the risk. Like, oh, shoot, like, yeah. But the worst thing to do is to not do it. I mean, not because of all these.
But,
Anyone?
Certain amount of risk is involved, like directly jumping into the water.
Yeah, I mean, too much of risk is also, I mean, if it's so clear-cut, identical, and he's got it protected in so many countries and very big player, maybe it's a non-starter sometimes, you get into it,
So
you can't
having
even get any traction.
to operate analysis before getting into any kind of thing would be a risk-free kind of approach, or
I mean, as I said, I mean, if you make a search, I mean, I would suggest that it really depends. I mean, if you have a strategy like that and you're very sure about your strategy, there's no wrong. I mean, in business, I mean, there's this particular street, they got 3 restaurants and you want to open up a 4th restaurant, who's to stop you? Although your risk is going to be there because you got another 3 more restaurants in the doing well. But then you can also have an argument, yes, but it's generating a lot of crowd over there, I can also get part of the crowd, who knows? So I would say, yes, make a search if you can. But if you have a strategy where you think you can actually ride on them and you have your strategy, fine, you want and you're willing to take the risk, go ahead.
So it's a risk and reward.
Yeah, that's exactly
It's
what I'm
always
saying.
risk and
It's
reward. I
very
mean,
left to you.
Risk of getting sued for your IP,
Yeah.
reward of becoming $1 billion business.
So
Right. So
and you want to, and how much do you want to infringe? You want to copy just that slight technology, but you call it a totally different name? Or do you want to take the technology, the swipe thing, and even call it a similar name, Tinder 2? Even bigger risk. So it's left to individuals.
Tinder.
Tinder, yeah. Or different spelling.
Any question? Yes.
I'm running a startup and I'm creating something new, I think. But I don't know like if I should patent it now or I should develop more the technology and patent it after, or maybe I can start and after like upgrade this patent. I don't know how that part works.
What's the name for it? I mean, you got a name already for that
Yes.
particular. Okay.
I have the brand, but the part
Have the brand protected. That's key. How far are you in moving it? I mean, is it already?
already users board, I raise some money from angels.
Already, you can raise and speak to speak to 90% and see whether you have got a technology that can be protected first. And since you've already raised some money, it's not a very expensive process as well. It's not necessary. So you may wish, so you speak to them and you tell them, okay, what can I get protected? And then if they say, yes, you can get something protected and it's going to be so much, and you feel like, yeah, that's something I can afford. You'd rather have it protected and not do it at all.
And one
And which stage to it, and which stage to do it. If you feel you have got something now, you can always find it now. If you have an improvement later and the improvement can't be added on because it goes beyond the initial disclosure, you can file another application later. But it again depends on how your business moves. That's an answer. You said you got some money in, you got some traction. So you can invest back into your business and get your patent protected. But if your answer was no, I'm at the initial stage, I've not done anything, I've not even filed, I've not moved, I've not got any funds, and I don't even have the funds, then you can still talk to an agent just to find out how good your invention is. If your invention is still it's quite cutting edge, then maybe you should still try to invest and file a patent. But in case they say it's just so, there's so many similar type inventions, then not necessarily to just waste your money and file a
Can you
patent.
find one and evolve it?
Yes, you can, yeah, that's right. You can.
patent
Yes.
portfolio, you have your own portfolio.
You just keep improving on it. Yeah.
Hi, it's enlightening to hear that you may even balance and compare in the sense where either you get sued or becoming $1 billion company. But from an investor perspective, how would an investor see an IP that's on a borderline case like that?
At least regular investors will always do their due diligence, right? Well, actually, if you're an investor, you're obligated to do your own due diligence. Even in the stock market, right? I mean, why would I buy, I don't know, what's some stock here in Malaysia if I don't even know anything about that company, right? So it's the same thing where you just have to assess your own risk and reward profile. And that's why I said that when I look at companies, at least our patent lawyer always looks at what is the potential risk of infringement globally, right? Not just in the Philippines, because I guess, as you know, right, I mean, you have to do a global kind of search, right, for some of these things. So you just have to assess, at least for us, is this really high risk of infringement, low risk, medium risk, and then we make a strategic decision. I mean, honestly, in the end of the day, so I know my board, they're all PE people. We had this board meeting last week, and they said, do not let the lawyers and accountants dictate your strategy. Let the business and the market and your customers dictate your strategy, right? So that was a good, I mean, honestly, because I said, oh, you know, you're owning some of these companies, you have to put in the books, our accountant advises do this, our lawyers advise do this. And that was a very good insight. So that's I'm imparting to you because I think that's another thing you have to always think about. Business, market, customers, trucks, and then you assess versus the advice of your legal and accounting counsel.
So meaning to say, as investors, you will not totally discount a company just because there's some possibility of being sued.
Yeah, that's why you have a risk assessment, right? I mean, if the lawyer says, you know what, next year this guy is going to get sued, right, by this huge behemoth who has a lot of money to sue you, then you have to reassess, oh, that's too much of a risk I can take. But if it's not, especially if it's, for example, just patented in the US, yeah, or it might not be granted, it's a patent pending.
It's only a patent pending.
Yeah, oh, let's try it. Let's try it out. If this market could be a huge market, right? So
We need to understand.
How long is the patent pending period? Is it 2.5 years?
No, patent pending can vary, but typically 2.5 years you should get it granted. But your patent will last for 20 years typically. 20 years. 20 years is the
post granted,
yeah. From the date of filing till you can enforce your right to 20 years. Most countries.
Go back to what you asked. A friend of mine, an old traditional businessman from Hong Kong, gave me this advice. If your problem is a problem of money, it's not a problem.
Okay, what's the next statement?
It sounds better in Cantonese, of course. Right? If your problem is a problem of money, then it's actually not a problem. And going back to what Earl said, right? At the end of the day, why do you register your trademark or you register a patent, right? A technology, for example, right? Okay, number one, obviously the first level is to protect yourself commercially from people stealing your idea and profiting from it. But if somebody is using your technology, you don't mind if there's a share revenue licensing agreement, right? So at the end of the day, if it's basically because of money, right? If a behemoth sues you, then obviously they don't care about the money you had. You may have like 100,000 revenue a year, right? And there's no room for growth. They just want you're just a pest to them. But if you're as big as Facebook and Friendster, it's like, hey, you know what? Fine, use whatever you want to use. You just give me the royalty, quietly. They don't even need to operate commercially in that sense, So yeah, so basically, again, in terms of getting sued, at the end of the day, you weigh your risk factor, right? Is this a commercial type of lawsuit? Is it something that they want? Is it something that you're able to afford? And maybe because of the publicity that you get, that's going to actually gain you. If you're smart enough, it's actually going to gain you a shitload of, publicity, for very little money because they are paying for it, right? So how, in the end, are you going to mitigate, the entire risk, right? So, yeah, it sounds better in Cantonese.
What is the phrasing? What if there's a problem?
If the problem is a problem of money, then it's not a problem. Yeah. Yeah. I'll introduce you to my friend from Hong Kong.
I want to share something also. Have you all heard of the McCurry McDonald's case?
Yeah.
How many? I mean, I just show of hands, please. I know Malaysians don't like share. Right? Okay, good. Okay, McCurry, McDonald's, well-known case over here. McDonald's sued McCurry because McCurry was using a similar sounding name. You know the outcome of the case? Who won the case? Who won? Okay. McCurry. Yeah, McCurry won the case. Okay, McCurry won the case. But you go out now, the McCurry outlet in Jalan Ipoh is also shut down, and they've not even expanded. So my point is, I mean, exactly what Bobby mentioned earlier. It depends. I mean, it can give you a bit of traction, something it can make you a bit more famous. See, when when he took that name, firstly, no one was getting into McCurry thinking they can go and buy a hamburger. No one thought they can go and get a Big Mac by going into McCurry, because McCurry was a mama stall, you know. You can only get roti canai and things like that. But why did McCurry sue them? McDonald's sue them because for McDonald's the name is important. Everything rides on the name. It's not so much just the food, but it's a name. If they allow McCurry to just go on, then you'll see Mac so many things. The name will be diluted. So in a way, they need to teach McCurry a lesson. Now, was McCurry right to do it? McCurry claims. No, I mean, I'm just using McCurry because I'm selling chicken curry. And MC means Malaysian chicken curry.
Also can. Malaysia boleh.
Why not MM curry? Why not MF curry? Malaysian fish curry. When he went MC curry, his argument, you know, he got Malaysian chicken curry, so Mac curry. But he won the case, okay? But what I'm trying to say is, although he won the case, okay, there's a lot of traction, he got the advertisement, yes, but again, he did not benefit from it. So, you could have also, some would have benefited from it, I agree with you. So again, it depends on strategy. So he got into it, he got into all this trouble for 8 years. He was just focused on the legal side, he had to pay his lawyers, he lost out, his business did not grow, his business shut down, McDonald's lost, but at the end of the day, for McDonald's set aside 1 million, it's nothing. So they lost out where the case is concerned, but they won where business is concerned. They have showed everybody else. Yeah, they won the war because they showed everybody else. If you use my name, I'll come after you. Yeah. Yes, you might win the case, but I'll come after you. You know. Yeah. So, do you want to get into that sort of litigation? But again, that's what you're arguing. If you want to get a bit of name, you want to do it, you can. But sometimes it may not even work for you. Right. In the case of McCurry. Okay, so just to share with you, actual real life things. Real thing that happened in Malaysia. Okay.
Any question?
Anything else? Any doubts?
Maybe I'll make a kind of reverse comment from a McCurry comment, which is, at least from the technology field, sometimes these types of situations could be a positive for both the investors and the startup. Why? Because if you actually generate that, a lot of times they'll sue the startup could shut down, but they'll basically do acqui-hire, right? Because they know that you've known the domain, you probably have out-execute them as a large company. So again, these are like kind of
different
fringe
strategy.
Fringe strategy, but yeah, that's the strategy. Why not, right?
All right. I think time for lunch. But before we close, 1 minute takeaway for your audience. Any advice? 1 minute.
Okay, I'll start. And I keep on mentioning that IP alone without commercialization is useless. Commercialization without thinking of IP is dangerous. But if you mirror both IP and commercialization and execution, then you're an investable company.
I do the same thing. Let's remember that. Okay.
I don't even remember it, but it sounded good.
Is it recorded? Oh, okay, good.
Don't get too caught up with IP. Just don't get too caught up with IP. It's your business that moves. But at the same time, understand IP. It's not something so difficult. It's not something too complicated, and it's not expensive. So don't treat IP as something that is not important. It is important, but also don't get too caught up with it. Your business has to move. But understand your strategy and have a strategy, and it doesn't need to be expensive.
All right. Thank you, Mohan. Thank you all.
Thank you everybody for joining our panel here. It is our second last panel of this one. We have one more after lunch at 2 to 3 p.m. So this is breakout 6. One more after that. It is called Funding Your Ideas, Crowdfunding and Crowdsourcing. We've got 2 speakers. One is Sam Shafi from the crowdfunding website Pitchin, based in Malaysia, as well as Scott Gillespie. He was speaking yesterday. I know that some of you really like hearing him speak. He's the head of Jigsaw Group, and he had some really great inputs for everybody here. So those are the two speakers coming up next at 2 to 3 p.m.